you want to step back one big step and ask yourself, why is this particular project or initiative so important? And then when you answer that, you say, if it went perfectly well, beyond your wildest dreams, what would happen? What would change in the world? I think what OKRs really are for is keeping those goals as part of your daily rhythm so that you can actually achieve them. It's so sad when people have a dream and they can never make it happen. You're always trying to balance that out. It is a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Christina, you're very welcome to the ScaleX Insider podcast. Really delighted and thrilled to have you on the show today.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me.
You're very, very welcome. Finally, we made it happen after a little bit of rescheduling. But at this stage, our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So, Christina, what does scaling with purpose mean to you?
I think it really, for me, it means, why are you scaling? Is scaling actually a choice? I feel like there's a lot of words that we use over and over without really thinking through, what does this mean? Do I have a different choice? A lifestyle business is absolutely fine. You can make, $500,000, $1 million just with a small business and never have to go become 20 billion like other ones. So I think what I would say scaling with purpose is what is your purpose to even have a company? What is the thing that brings you joy? And then regular check-ins to make sure that that joy is still there.
Yeah, I really, really like that. My sentiment in that is, if you do have a wonderful product or service, given your wonderful work and everything else that's out there, there are ways and means in which you can scale and scale with purpose. Lots of times people are prevented because they don't know how. So we're going to do a deep dive into that today. I love your book. I'm holding it up. For those who are listening, you won't be able to see this. The wonderful book, Radical Focus, Achieving Your Most Important Goals with Objectives and Key Results. So we'll kick off with, I think, the obvious question for those who are not familiar with objectives and key results. What are they, Christina?
So I find people often don't understand what they are. I mean, of course, the acronym already gives you a hassle, but it stands for objectives and key results, obviously. But people seem to think they're like SMART goals, but OKRs aren't just a way of setting a goal. It's a way of achieving the goal. There's actually a lightweight methodology that goes with that acronym that helps you figure out how to keep making progress despite all of life's shiny apples. I don't know about you, but my life is just full of insane numbers of things, other kinds of work. Somebody wants a favor, somebody wants a podcast. And then I can easily get distracted from what I really want to make do. So I think what OKRs really are for is keeping those goals as part of your daily rhythm so that you can actually achieve them.
Yeah. What are they not, importantly?
What are they not? I see a lot of people, I guess I'm saying the same thing and only backwards. I see a lot of people, they set OKRs and then they forget them. They never touch them. And then they get to the end of the quarter or however they're measuring it, look at these goals and go, why didn't they happen? Because the power of the OKR is to be strategic. So if you're using them to say when you're going to do a project or we're going to launch this from this point, that's not really an OKR. It's fine, but you want to step back one big step and ask yourself, why is this particular project or initiative so important? And then when you answer that, you say, if it went perfectly well, beyond your wildest dreams, what would happen? What would change in the world? And that will guide you. And then you can go back and say, hey, what are 15 ways I could do this? So it really is a thinking process as well as a system for achieving.
And I feel most of our listeners will be familiar with another 3-letter acronym, KPIs. Let's call it out right at the outset. What's the difference between OKRs, objectives and key results, and KPIs, key performance indicators?
Well, KPIs are any number that tells you something important about your business, right? OKRs are really about setting goals, not just measuring them, but saying where we want them to be, that are really critical to the strategy of your business. So if you think of the Eisenhower matrix where there's important and not important, urgent and not urgent, we always do the urgent side, sometimes even if it's not important, but we often forget about what's really important and not urgent. I mean, how many times have I said, let me sit down and write this blog post, and days go by and days go by because it's never urgent, but I still need to do it. I know it's part of keeping my voice out there. So I have to actually say, one of my goals are to, I might say, write these blog posts. And I say, oh, Christina, you're stupid. Don't write blog posts. Why are you writing blog posts? Well, I'm writing blog posts to actually keep my name in the game, make people aware of the thoughts that I want to share. So is there a better way I can do it? I went to blog posts because I've been a blogger since 2000, you know. So now I have to ask myself, what else could I do? Well, I could go on a podcast. I could drop just top of mind thoughts on LinkedIn. You know, there's a lot of different ways to achieve your goals. And what's wonderful about that, the thing that excites me about it, is that if you have many ways to try, you can try all of them. You can move from the one you think is going to work to the next one to the next one until you start seeing numbers move. And then, of course, I'd have to figure out what numbers I'm moving, but that's a whole other story.
I'm really, really curious. I mean, what's driven your passion around objectives and key results of all of the things, of all of the business tools that you could get focused on? What drove you to evangelize about objectives and key results and ultimately write a book about it and devote a huge amount of your career evangelizing about objectives and key results? What's driven that?
I would say, like everything in life, part serendipity and part planning. Um, Strategy and opportunism always need to be matched to draw you forward in your career or in your business's well-being. So really simply, I worked at Zynga, you know, and we used OKRs there. That was a John Doerr company, which means he told Mark, you should use this. Mark loved it. Mark Pincus, former CEO of Zynga. And so what I did then is said, okay, how will I use this? I didn't say how I'll use it. I went out and tried to get another job. And talking to people, I started to realize, wow, they can't get things done. Well, Zynga, you know, they always got things done. I won't say whether they're good things or bad things or something in the middle things, but they definitely got them done. They could move metrics the way some people play piano. And so I really wanted to bring that forward to my to other people. It's so sad when people have a dream and they can never make it happen. And I thought, well, I got this cool little tool with my belt, and let me see if I share it and anybody likes it. People really liked it. I had no idea that I had just caught one of the biggest waves in business management for many years. It was just stupid luck. You know, I was out there paddling, watching for waves, and that one took me all the way to the shore. So I wrote my book because I thought, hey, nobody will read a book about OKRs, so let's make it a story. Made it the best thing I could do, put it out there. You may remember the first edition was teeny. I wanted it to be a tiny book that you could read from say, San Francisco to Seattle. And people loved it. They also really loved that it was short. That's one advice I'd ever give to an author is make it shorter. And that just set everything off. I wrote a couple other books, but this is the one that's really resonated with people right now. And I would say, yeah, very lucky, very hard work combination.
You mentioned John Doerr, who is synonymous with objectives and key results, wrote the wonderful book Measure What Matters as well, which dives deeply into his experience with objectives and key results. Just share with our listeners a number of companies out there that people will recognize who have implemented objectives and key results as a goal setting methodology to operationalize their strategy. Who else has really implemented OKR successfully?
Who is really, you know, I'm not a coach to all those people. I have a fairly limited reach, to be honest. So I would be loath to say more than some of the things I've seen. I've seen Pepsi using it really successfully in some of their R&D spaces. That's a fairly big name. I really can't think of anything, to be honest. This might be a Rob moment for me.
Well,
I have to do the research.
I suppose John Doerr talks about Google's successful implementation.
Oh, yeah, that's a gimme. Yeah. I thought you were asking for more than just Google. Google, my God, Google's gone crazy, right? But you know what's funny about Google? This is actually worth talking about. The funny thing about Google is that they don't all use OKRs, and many people use it horribly. When we talk about a company, we think it's like a company, like a small business. But when you have scaled to be that big, and I think this is very relevant to your listeners, when you become that big, there is no good way to get everybody pointing in the same direction. It's really close to impossible. And so OKRs, which was this magical thing that really helped them get big, is now something that they can't seem to get everybody to use correctly and effectively. It's a great mystery. I have tons of friends over there, and I go over and I have lunch, and they're always talking about how somebody keeps putting tasks in the OKR, somebody group has 15 OKRs, just all sorts of nonsense. So when we think about our heroes, businesses or people, we should remember that they are just people, or with Google, made of people. There's so many mistakes that are made, and it's really hard to get it right.
Well, let's dive deep into that then. And what I love to do on these podcasts is to make them super practical, to deliver like mini master classes. So if we can today, let's and I encourage people to go out, of course, and grab your incredible book, Radical Focus, and read the story firsthand, and then get the practicalities of actually implementing OKRs in your business. But so people are hearing about this for the first time. They have aspirations to scale their business. Where do they start?
Where do you start? I like to start way before we even get to OKRs, because OKRs in a lot of ways are sort of a bridge between strategy and execution. So I'd say the first thing you do is your mission actually any good? I know I went to the 10,000 point view, but is your mission good? Is it something that actually says where you're trying to play and who you're trying to make happy? Then think about a vision. So we're coming back, we're going to move down in time. We're going to start way up here with your mission, which is probably why you exist. And that could be 50 years, it could be 10 years, we don't know. Then we're going to come down into vision. Where would you like to be in 5 years or maybe 2 years? This really depends on what kind of business you are. Some businesses have very slow cycles, some businesses have very fast cycles. But let's say it's a 5-year vision. Okay, good. So now we're going to go to strategy. How are we going to literally make this vision happen? How are we going to make sure that the things that have to happen to make it come true exist? Now, once we have the strategy, we're ready to bring in the OKRs, because now we're ready to chop it up into certain outcomes or milestone outcomes. A lot of times I get teased for using the word milestone because it usually means shipping something, but honestly, they're outcome based. Where should we be? How many users should we have here? How many customers should we have there? How much revenue should we? It's just stretching it out into goalposts, if you prefer. I guess goalpost at least keeps with goals. And so then you're asking yourself, well, what is this year really about? Is this the year that we acquire more users? Is this the year we really focus on our sustainability? Sort of theming out that year and then picking 4 strong goalposts to take you through that year. And then you get out of OKRs, right? We're leaving that bye-bye, and we get it to an outcome-based roadmap. And the outcome-based roadmap says, now, later, next. Very, very simple, not into exact dates, but really just hitting what are we going to work on right this minute to hit those OKRs? What are we going to do next? And later is sort of a big pile of ideas that you might do, you might never do. And then finally, we get to the release plan, which means what we're doing now. There's an idea, I'm going to pause for a second. There's an idea called the cone of uncertainty, and it says the farther out in the future we go, the harder it is for us to predict. And so this is what we're talking about. Missions are very fuzzy, visions are fuzzy, but now we get to the release plan, and the release plan is very specific because it could be our very next thing that we release, at which point we can put dates because we've been working on this project long enough that we should understand what we're capable of and what we're not. And if we don't know what we're capable of, then it's really important to start measuring your own work, your team's work, and learn how fast they can get things done. Otherwise, you're just going to torture yourself with really stupid goals.
So there's a lot in that. Let me just
Okay.
recap and summarize what I feel I've heard. So, and this aligns very much to what we coach around in the context of our ScaleX 10 principle framework. The second principle is purpose and vision. You use mission, we talk about purpose. So, why do you exist and where are you going? The
Perfect.
the the going out, we encourage people to go out 10 years just to get a landing spot in terms of their North Star, and then reverse engineer to 3 to 5 years. And what I'm hearing, that's very much aligned with your experience of this as well, Christina. Breaking out of that 3 to 5 year vision, then we're looking at the key pillars, 4 pillars you've mentioned in terms of what undergirds that vision, and then align to those pillars. We're looking at 1 year goals that undergird those pillars and give then the annual plan a theme, and then we look at how we operationalize what we're doing on an annual basis with the objectives and key results. Is that have I captured that right?
I think that's essentially correct. I see people use different words for the same thing, which is so I don't worry too much about that. But yes, you start with why the hell do we exist? Why is this business in this world anyway? And get all the way down to we're shipping, this fix to a problem next week, because it comes all the way up and down. without meaning and without purpose, it's very easy to be so opportunistic that you start becoming a company that's about everything and trying to do everything. And if you spread yourself too thin, it's impossible to actually achieve goals. So that clarity of vision at each level is really important.
Yeah, agreed. We're absolutely aligned. And then with that clarity of vision, that's informing what we're going to do on an annual basis in the context of, let's say, the four themes. And typically, for a scaling business, we'll be looking at a pillar that is revenue growth and business impact, let's say. We'll be looking at, again, in the context of the scaling business, a team related pillar and team goals. We'll be looking at it as an innovation pillar and an innovation goal. The and then potentially a customer success pillar, customer success goals. So we've got our pillars identified. We have our annual goals. Then in terms of the objectives and key results, they're typically implemented, and certainly in my own experience, in this 90-day quarterly kind of cadence format. Why is that so, and what does that 90-day rhythm look like?
So I want to quickly say, when we talk about these goals, they are outcome-based goals. They're not output. In other words, you're not saying I'm shipping this, as a theme. You're saying we're moving these numbers as a theme. But I always have to repeat myself because, well, I'm both a mom and a teacher, so that's what I do. But when we talk about 90-day rhythms, it's funny you said that, because literally just this morning, I was thinking about temporal landmarks, which is this really amazing concept that came out of Katie Milkman's work. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's got a great podcast called Choiceology, but she is a research professor. And temporal landmarks, she has proven that they are the moments in time where you're most likely to be successful. So there's something about beginning of January 1st or your birthday, if just in your everyday life, where you stop and you pause naturally and you say, what do I really want? And companies have a lot of natural rhythms that you can use to make OKRs more successful. We have, annual, quarterly, weekly. They're already built into business. Something I wrote about this morning was about how to get a hold of each of those. But I realized I didn't talk about something else that's really great about them. So BJ Fogg is a guy who studies, he's a teacher here, who studies habit making. He's got a terrific book called Tiny Habits. And Tiny Habits talks about habit stacking or habit chaining, which means every morning I wake up and I make myself coffee. In fact, that's the first thought I have most of the times when I wake up, it's a coffee. But if I say I have coffee and then I take my medicine, I get the habit of taking medicine. I don't skip taking medicine. And now I can stack again. I take my coffee, I take my medicine, I feed the animals, and then I do 5 minutes of yoga. Now I'm sneaking in other habits. So what's really great about these rhythms is they're already there. You're already having a Monday meeting anyway. Let's take 5 minutes to go over our OKRs and just see, are we getting closer or further? We're already doing a lot of look at our financials at the end of the quarter. Well, let's figure out, are goals still reasonable? Do we need to set new goals, or do we need to evolve those goals, those OKRs? So by piggybacking on existing goals, it's much easier to make OKRs into a habit. And when OKR, the radical focus cadence in particular, once that becomes a habit, you just get better and better at making things happen and learning what is in your way and learning how to get rid of it.
Yeah. Something we do on a Monday morning, we have our team meeting. We call it our weekly kind of calibration meeting, which is getting everybody calibrated after the weekend. That the Monday morning can be challenging, just having that transition again after kind of a weekend not thinking or not spent working. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to calibrate people again for the week ahead, and we check in, just a quick check on the OKR progress. What are people's priorities for the week ahead? And then at the end of the week, we capture our wins of the week, which is about celebrating. So we calibrate at the start of the week, we celebrate at the end of the week, and then every 90 days we come together to establish our objectives. We review our objectives from the previous 90 days, look at the success or otherwise, and then we set the objectives for the forthcoming 90 days aligned with the annual goals. What I found certainly in coaching through our own program around the methodology, Christina, is that people really struggle with the implementation. They want quick results. In my experience, I've found that it's really 3 cycles So it's almost, you're 9 months before you're really getting a hold of this. What's your experience been? Is that aligned with your own experience? And what are the pitfalls typically when people are implementing objectives and key results for the first time?
Okay. So once again, there's like 1,000 things I could say in response to all the good stuff that's in that question. But I will start with, if you think you're going to get a quick win from OKRs, you're barking up the wrong tree. This is something stable and solid that you do for the rest of your life. It's sort of like you can go on a diet and lose weight and then bounce back, or you can change how you eat and build that rhythm of eating more vegetables, eating more fruits. And that's a lifestyle choice, and that you get the results way slower than you wish you would. It's hard because you already have these old habits that you're trying to bump off with your new goals, and you're going to struggle. And I think 3 sounds completely reasonable to me. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and then you hit fourth quarter. And fourth quarter in most of the Western world is sort of a lost quarter. It's a period of time where there's lots of parties, and the New Year's coming, and you get to do half as much work as you think you're going to be able to do in Q4. So really taking the moment at the end of each one of these quarters to pause and really think, what did we accomplish? What got in our way? Formally set aside a couple hours. 2 hours is about the longest meeting that most humans can put up with, and figure out what happened, and then look forward and say, what makes Q2 special? You don't want to just say what follows up on Q1. You want to say Q2 is going to be spring into summer. I'm going to get a lot of energy. People are going to start looking at, there's a break here. I think capacity is underrated, and understanding what you're capable of doing in OKR conversations. I just did a beta with a class I'm going to be giving on OKRs online. And one of the number one things they were struggling with was just knowing what they were capable of. They had a bunch of people, but nobody wants to sit down and do the math and say, okay, if we have 6 productive hours a day, and believe me, all the science says you have 6 productive hours in a day done per people, and let's say 75% is business as usual, or heartbeat work, as I like to call it, then that leaves us a much smaller number than we thought we had for strategy, which means we either have to move something, or we're going to set OKRs that are appropriate. And so the more you measure, the smarter you get at this. And then by Q3 or Q4, depending on the company, you understand it, but then you're going to get disrupted. And that's the test of a true habit. If you've built up great eating habits in October, and then suddenly you face November and December, it's going to be hard to get through that. So you have to really feel like Q4 is going to be a little bumpy, but then January, we have that temporal landmark to really kick us in the ass, and you can dive in. So yeah, are you going to see amazing results in year 1? Maybe. Are you going to get amazing results overall in 2, 3, 4, and 5? I think so.
Brilliant. So what we're encouraging our listeners to do who are coming to objectives and key results for the first time, keen on implementing objectives and key results, is to exercise a level of patience, which is not a characteristic or a trait you would typically associate with entrepreneurs, founders of businesses. But there's something really important in this, because we certainly say and advocate that if you're scaling a business, we use the metaphor of summiting Scale Everest. And what we don't want is you charging up the side of this huge mountain and arriving at the top, and your team's strewn all along the mountainside, and they're bedraggled and they're frustrated, and you've got up there trying to scream and shout at everybody else to come up with the same pace. Ultimately, you're in a frazzled state. The team's in a frazzled state, and nothing really has been achieved because you've charged on. It's back to that kind of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And just as I say that, I feel that the objectives and key results methodology is a way of going far together in a similar cadence, aligned with transparency as to where everybody's going, and accountability along the way, because these objectives are being set by team members. They're not being set by the founder, the CEO, and then be forced down. Can you speak to that? And because accountability is certainly that kind of alignment, transparency, and accountability, for me, those, and you tease them out in the book as the key Can you speak to those, Christina?
Yes. It was funny because you were talking about the metaphor of Everest. And I've been fascinated reading a few essays on various people who scaled the mountain for the first time. And I want to point out that while you're rushing up the mountain, a lot of your team has got frostbite, they're losing limbs, they're possibly never coming back. If you're really going to do something huge, you have to pace it just so you can make it, so that you can come off that mountain, or maybe get to the next mountain with all your parts intact, and having not eaten anyone. That's really important. So burnout is always one of the big dangers at a startup, and that's sort of the equivalent. What if you have amazingly talented people, but you've driven them so hard that they have no choice but to quit just to get a vacation? These are hard things for a lot of entrepreneurs to put in their mind. In fact, I have an entrepreneur I've been coaching for a long time, and I have to yell at him to say, no, take a vacation with your wife if you want to keep having one, you know? So you're always trying to balance that out. It is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So also, the other thing I think is really important to think about is the founder is going to make the business what it is forever, even after you leave. So just as they set the culture, and if there's a culture of go, 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 burn yourself out, that's something you're not going to be able to get rid of. Culture shifts are really, really hard. I'd say very close to impossible. So if you think about what kind of company do I want to build, how do I want to make a life for the people who are going to be working with me? You need to get it right in the beginning. And that's because that's what you're going to be forever. And that doesn't mean you don't have a little bit of room, sort of pre-market fit, or right after it. You have some wiggle room to correct, but don't be in such a mad hurry that you're willing to burn down everybody, because that's going to set that brutal climate forever. And then you talked about alignment, that's another one. So as a leader, whether you're an executive group or a founder, you still are going to set the vision of where we're going. And the vision can be down all the way down to the, quarterly level. But you have to trust your teams to say, here's how we're going to try to make it happen. Here's the kind of objectives we can move. So it's really bouncing up and down. You want to go up to the vision, but then down to the level of what are we actually doing this week. And I think it's a very, it's a delicate thing for entrepreneurs, because they always see the top of Everest and everybody else is like, I just need to get to the next base camp and nap. So going back to your metaphor again. So when you think of setting the OKRs, think of it as a team sport. You're going to say, we're going that way. People are going to say, oh, well, we're going to take bikes and we're going to take the bus, because that's the kind of company we are. And then you can say, no bus, it's not reliable, just bikes. I like bikes. It's a crazy metaphor, but it is sort of how that conversation goes, which is balancing between vision and reality.
Yeah. I love that. Pace it so you can make it. That aligns really nicely with the metaphor that we always use about summiting Scale Everest, and OKRs is really a way of supporting leaders and teams to keep pace together, I feel. And let's get into accountability, because it's something I hear from leaders constantly, that I'm trying to do this, but nobody's taking accountability in the organization for delivering that. And this is certainly before they implement objectives and key results. What's your experience of this? And is it similar? And can you share with the listeners how the objectives, key results methodology supports greater accountability amongst the wider team?
It's funny because I do hear this a lot from leaders. They're saying, well, I need people to have more accountability. And to be honest, I think it's a code word for something else, for some other kind of people problem. When they say accountability, do they mean they aren't doing what I want them to do? When they say accountability, do they mean they're not updating me with how they're making progress? When they say accountability, are they not doing the things they promised to do? There's so much in that little word that suggests this incredible tension between the leader and the followers, if you want to call them followers, or the leader and the employees. So when I'm coaching like this, I say, paint me a picture. Can you tell me about a time when your team wasn't accountable? And usually I can figure out what sort of problem it is. So you can do this for yourself. You can just say, okay, God, I'm so angry with these people. God, they're not accountable for anything. And then you could hear the word, step back and ask yourself, well, what really happened? When did I see this happening? How did I feel? And is there a way to make sure it never happens again? I'm a huge fan of learning. You should make all mistakes only once, if you possibly can get away with it. So the most important thing is saying, what happened there and what will happen next time? And then you prepare yourself, so when you're stepping into the next time, you already know what to do. I'm very pragmatic, as you may have noticed. So when I hear those big fuzzy words, I'm like, what does that actually mean when we're on the floor talking to each other?
Going back to uh, the the quarterly OKR setting, kind of that period where we're reviewing back and then we're looking forward, what should we be coming out of the room with? And I suppose let's get really practical. How many people should be in that room? And what should people be coming out with at the end of that 2 hour process to review and to look forward in terms of setting the
Mm,
OKRs for the forthcoming quarter?
mm. Well, how many people is in the room is a really tricky one, but in the years that I've been facilitating meetings, I find that when you get larger than 6, um, people can just be a ghost or a spectator. You won't get their ideas. You won't have their voice properly represented. And also the dynamic changes. It changes from conversation to performance, the more people you have in the room. When you're performing, you're just telling people this is how it is. When it's a conversation, it's much easier to ask questions, to pull ideas out. So I like 6 or fewer. No, 3 to 6 is like a sweet spot. Maybe you can get a little higher, maybe you don't. But next time you're in a meeting that has more than 6 people, look and watch for those people who are just drafting. Like drafting is when you ride a bicycle and somebody else rides a bicycle behind you, so they're breaking the wind for you. Yeah, there's always some people who are just riding along, having an easier time because they don't have to do the work of having hard conversations.
You must have cycled with me, Christina.
Yeah, I didn't know you're a cycler.
Yeah,
You know who I'm talking about then.
absolutely, I do.
So with 6, speaking of accountability, it's hard to hide when there's only 6 of you. So I suggest, start breaking the meetings in half. Maybe have a sub meeting and then, with your 6 leads or your 4 leads, and then bring that to the executive team. An executive team of 14 or 15 or 20 people, it's not an executive team that's going to get a lot done when they're working together. So then a leader should think about, can I break these up into initiatives? Are these particular execs all really working on customers? So that can kind of become a single entity to some degree. But it's just the reality that you get a bunch of people in the room and you get a lot of noise and not a lot of signal.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on an earlier meeting. That makes a huge amount of sense. So you've mentioned a couple of times, tasks and initiatives. This is what OKRs isn't. It's not a shopping list of all the things that you have to do. Can you give an example of of a really well written objective and key result?
Hmm. I'll make one up because I don't hear them every day. I was just working with decoding 8. This company had 8 OKRs, and I was like, "Ooh, this is going to be fun." So a really great objective might be something along the lines of, let's say you're a pet food company, and you're going to launch a whole new product line of, customized pet foods for various illnesses that animals have. That's a beautiful growing market. It's very interesting. Well, then you're going to step back and ask yourself, what should we do first? We're going to have to make new types of food. We're going to have to change our manufacturing process. We're going to have to sell it and figure out how we're going to segment that market. We've got a bunch of things we want to do. And I have learned over the years of trying to teach OKRs, rarely do people say goals first. So then we say, why are we doing this? Why are we targeting our market? Well, because it will get us, a higher sales per person. Well, that's what we really want, is higher sales per person. Why do we need to have these special formulations? Because it's efficient to make, so we don't lose so much money, and it's particularly effective for sales. People love the idea of being customized. So you're kind of like tearing things apart, rebuilding them, tearing things apart, and rebuilding them. And you can also then look at sequencing, like, is there any dependencies in there? What should we do first and what should we do second? I would argue that in a smart strategy, you would develop the new pet foods first, test them, in small markets, and then put out a giant platform on your website or an app to use it. So then you start going, okay, these are both maybe 6 months each, right? Good luck with that, but still. And then you start saying, okay, develop the new products. Well, if we're talking about 6 months, if we're talking about 6 months, then what is the first quarter? What's the second quarter? Then you can kind of theme it. Like the first quarter is all about research and figuring out what works. And then we'll have a go, no go. And I love exit criteria for knowing whether or not you're going to have new OKRs or you're going to recycle your OKRs, or you can just evolve them as well. You don't have to have something new every single quarter. But you hit the end of the quarter, you're like, okay, we haven't really found it yet. We can say, we still have the same OKRs. Look, I still haven't given you an OKR. So let's get an OKR for that group. So let's say your objective is expand product line for special needs pets, right? It's kind of a bread and butter objective, expand product line for special needs pets. You might want to change it to something like delight our customers with a special needs pet line. You may want to tweak it to make it a little more inspiring, but it really is the sentence that sets the overall direction for the effort. Then we say, how do we know? How would we know we actually achieved this objective? What are the numbers in the world that we could actually know we've done something special? Well, we might increase our sales revenue from our existing special needs pet food products by 40% the next fiscal year. That is something that we say, if revenue is going up, it means something is working. Or maybe it's obtained positive feedback from at least 80% of the special needs pet owners surveyed regarding the effectiveness of the new products. So this is self-report. And if you know anything about metrics, it's kind of nice to have maybe a mix of behavioral and self-report. And that's another way you could find out. You could also look at straight up sales. You could say 30% of our revenue now comes from special needs. And if paired with a good revenue goal, that can become interesting.
Yeah. The visibility that objectives give in terms of alignment. So when I talk about goals, I know you use the objectives and goals kind of interchangeably. When I talk about goals, I'm thinking of kind of an annual goal, a broad goal, and then the objectives being those quarterly direction setting goals, direction setting objectives that are clearly measurable with key results, which you've just described, and that creates that pacing. Creates accountability, because what we're saying here, it's not the leader that's setting these, it's the team, maybe the 6-person teams coming together and deciding what would move the needle that's over and above business as usual activities, the things that just maintain, as you in your language, Christina, the heartbeat in the business. And just coming to that, what is the role of leadership in effective objective and key result setting?
Well, I'm going to use everybody's favorite phrase. It depends. I have a funny story. I don't know if you know Jared Spool. He has this really amazing company that does a lot of work in user experience. And he said a long time ago in a workshop I was in that he used to have "it depends" on all his cups and all his t-shirts because everybody loved it so much in his company. However, he said, I had to stop saying "it depends" because it drove our customers insane. People want a solid answer. A lot of this depends on what kind of leader and what kind of human being you are, right? So are you the kind of person who comes up with the crazy, brilliant ideas that are really going to shape this company? Or are you the kind of person who gathers people together and brings all those brilliant minds to come up with something great? It's going to be a lot about you, and you should know your strengths and weaknesses. So there is ways that I think are somewhat more successful, but if they're antithetical to who you are, they're not going to work. So if we have a Steve Jobs sort, he's going to come in with this amazing vision of how things are going to go and exactly what the strategy is. And he may even start telling the team what to do and then say, but that's where you need to step back. When you start saying, and this is exactly how we're going to do it, then you want to ask the team, what do you think we should do? How are we going to make it happen? I've got a couple ideas, but I'd like to hear yours first. That's a real struggle. Then there's the other type of person who is immediately like going, okay, guys, what should we do here? Where direction we want to go? And that can be nice, but sometimes it makes employees nervous that you don't have any kind of vision or any kind of strategy. So once you know what kind of person you are, you can work on that other side. If you're the crazy visionary, ask yourself, what if somebody in this group has exactly the most brilliant idea how to do this? What if they know more than me? Because there are like 6 brains instead of just my 1 brain. And then if you're the kind of person who's like very huggy, tree huggy and wants to just bring everybody together, remind yourself that they are looking to you for something. Maybe if you are a person with all the ideas, go talk to them one-on-one and sort of pick and choose what you think is a strong vision, or combine them and then bring that to the team again. And they'll love that it came from one of them. But you have to be the chooser at the very least, the person who picks the direction to go. And I know execs hate to pick. God, they really hate to pick. But that prioritization is another job you have as a leader, to say, this is the single most important thing for our company, and this is how we're going to make it happen. We're going to make these numbers. and you're going to help us.
In terms of pitfalls, and in your experience, the things that we as leaders need to avoid in order to ensure that we are successful in operationalizing our vision through the implementation of objectives and key results, what are the pitfalls? What are the things we need to avoid doing?
I mean, there's so many pitfalls, like the classic, which is blindly ignoring that you can't do everything all at once. Another pitfall is set and forget. I've covered that one already. Okay, so you set your OKRs and then you don't do anything with them for all 3 months. One of the other pitfalls is tricky to avoid because people sort of naturally respect authority, and as a leader, you have authority. There's going to be a struggle for them to not feel like your ideas are actually orders, and you want to avoid that. You want to move back from the task, the actual project that's going to make the outcomes happen, and try to leave that in the hands of the team. It doesn't mean you have to keep your mouth shut the whole time, but let them come up with some ideas. And then if they haven't come up with your idea, you can throw it in the pile, see how people react. You can even say, oh, I've made a mistake. I really shouldn't be listing my idea out. Why don't you guys go first? These are little moments that create vulnerability and make you look like a human being, not some evil robot. And they really help the team believe in you and want to do more for you. So go ahead and be wrong in public or correct yourself and encourage them to do the same. So everything you do is what your team will do. And that's one of the biggest roles leaders can have, is leading with curiosity, leading with kindness, leading with an awareness that the business is everybody. It's not just you.
Yeah, I love that. Kindness, curiosity, and awareness. Before we move into the close, is there anything, and it's such a wide question, but is there anything we haven't spoken about in the context of objectives and key results and adopting them, implementing them, ensuring that they're sustainable and that they just become part of your overall company habits and practices? Anything else you want to pick up on before we move into the close?
Well, I really think that when I'm helping people in the class or the book or whatever, there's a bunch of things we never talk about. We never talk about the importance of hiring really well. Everybody talks about empowered teams, but empowered teams only work if we hire well. What does it mean to hire well? We do it really poorly, right? We just grab something off the internet as a job description, change a few words, put it up, and then you sit in a room with somebody. And if you don't have questions that you've really thought through and designed to get information you need to hire, you're not going to do that. We don't talk very much about performance management except to say, don't connect OKRs to it. Well, in reality, that's not 100% possible because OKRs are always going to be an input into performance, but they're not everything. We're also going to talk about how well are you keeping the lights on? How well are you taking care of your people? What are your interpersonal relationships? We don't talk about some really basic stuff that management has to be good at in order for OKRs to be successful. Often the process of OKRs is just fine, but your people are not. And you have to ask yourself, well, if a person is not living up to what I need to accomplish these goals, what kind of conversation am I going to have with them? Are we going to talk about the fact that they can grow and I really believe in you? Or are you going to say, this keeps happening over and over again, and it's starting to hurt the company? We've got to talk about change. You have to do so many things you hate when you become a leader, and then you have to get good at them. And sometimes you may like the results. I don't think you ever like having a hard conversation with somebody, but hard conversations are magical. So I guess I'd say, in short, everybody talks about leaders, but don't forget about being a manager, because that is the fuel that will let OKRs really realize your vision, your dreams.
Here, here.
There.
I
Sorry.
I have a closing tradition to ask a question which leverages the incredible wisdom of the wonderful guest that I have in front of me and I get the privilege to speak to. So in that tradition, can you share with our listeners, Christina, 3 timeless takeaways?
3 timeless takeaways. Well, one of my favorite quotes, and I put it on the end of a lot of my talks, is be kind to everyone you meet, for they too are fighting a great battle, by John Watson, not the fictional famous one, but by an actual human being. And being kind and leading with kindness never hurts. Kindness doesn't mean you're a pushover. Kindness doesn't mean that you're going to go out of your way to do everything and just take care of them and never take care of you. You should be kind to yourself as well. But kindness means you're treating every human being as if they are a complete human being, and you're understanding that they are fighting a great battle. They're having a hard day. They're having a mental health day. Their kids are, moving back home after college. Like, people have stuff. And so when they cut you off in traffic or they interrupt you in a meeting, take a deep breath and say, okay, what's going on here, and recontextualize. So I love that quote for that. I think that's timeless indeed. Another one I would say is, it's okay to change. I, I read this essay called Self-Reliance by Emerson every year. I know it's a funny thing to read every year, but the heart of self-reliance says that to be truly great, you have to be willing to grow and to change. And just because yesterday you said, I will never use OKRs, doesn't mean that this week you can actually say, you know what? I've been listening to people and I think we might be able to use it. So let's go ahead and dive in. Your company doesn't want you to change your mind every 5 minutes, but showing that you can grow and you can correct yourself and you can admit being wrong is very powerful. So that's 2. Let's see if I can come up with a third one. I guess I would say, when it comes to goals, really remember that there are only 24 hours in the day and there are only 7 days in the week. And if you kill yourself trying to make things happen faster than that, what was the point of the goal? What have you achieved? Nothing. Your body may break down, stress will destroy. Oh God, there's an amazing new podcast or a amazing new audiobook from Robert Sapolsky that talks about all the ways stress destroys your body. It's utterly terrifying. It destroys every single bit of you. So I guess I would say, what was the way you put it? Oh, I wish I could remember. Pace it so you can make it. I don't know if I said it or you said it, but
You
I'd say
said
pace.
it, and I've captured, I've highlighted this because I love it.
I'm going to live to this one. I think that's a timeless piece of wisdom. I just wish I'd learned it a lot earlier. Yeah, pace it until you can make it.
What a
Work.
lovely way! What a lovely way to end, to bookend the conversation. Christina, you mentioned at the outset that you were involved in a new beta test of an online program for OKRs. So, can you share with our listeners what is next for you?
Yeah, I want to get this launched out to people. I mean, I mentioned earlier that people love a short book. The problem with a short book is afterwards you have a lot of questions. So I really designed this class to go deeper into it, to think about all the elements that go into being successful with OKRs. And so it's coming out on Maven in the fall. And if you want to sign up to be alerted to it, you can use my sign up page on Elegant Hack, Elegant HACK. .com. You put your name in there, your email in there, and I'll tell you when it's ready to go. When aiming August, September.
Brilliant. I wish you every success with that.
Thank
And is there any other ways that that our listeners can connect with you?
Gosh, I've kind of given up on X, but I am still on LinkedIn. So if you want to, if I write a new article, I always put it there. And as well, I've been blogging on Elegant Hacks for, I guess, since 2000, which is a long time. And you can always find more about any of these topics there. Because whenever I'm thinking, I write it down, and you can enjoy it too.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'm gonna dive into some of those. I've really enjoyed this conversation today. I hugely appreciate that you've written this wonderful book,
Thank you so
and
much.
I wish you every success with your beta, with your program, and we'll indeed signpost
With my
our
class.
listeners to that and put
Yeah.
put the details in the show notes.
It's
Christina,
it's practical. Oh, yeah, practical OKRs, the radical focus way. So hopefully
brilliant.
that. Watch for it on Maven.
That's super. Well, look, send us the details. We put that link in the
Will
show
do.
notes. And look, I look forward to staying in touch in the meantime. Christina,
Indeed.
take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're a wonderful audience. You remind me of a old Zen story, which was that there were 2 friends, and one played the equivalent of a guitar from the ancient times incredibly well. And the other person who had listened, he listened so completely, so attentively with his whole heart. And then one day the listener passed away and the player never played again, because it was never as sweet as having the best listener. And as someone who talks a lot, maybe too much, having someone who listens so completely and so deeply is a precious gift. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, Christina, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Thank you. That's a beautiful compliment. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Very
Listeners are
kind.
underappreciated, so I've had to appreciate you.
Thank you.